This is a $1, $1 American dollar. George Washington on the front, one on the back. Some experts say that this is the strongest currency in the world. And if we would like to keep it that way here in America, we need to make certain choices and live certain lifestyles, obviously, and work hard in order to maintain that. One thing we can do would be to raise our minimum wage. According to Investopedia, on July 18th, 2019, the U.S. House of Representatives passed an amended version of the Raise the Wage Act of 2019, which would gradually increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025. The current federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour and has not been increased since 2009. It looks like raising the minimum wage is exactly what our government wants to do. This could be fatal. This change in our society is going to wreak havoc on not only our economy, but our entire culture as well. The federal minimum wage need not be raised, despite our lawmakers' push for it. I myself came to this conclusion and came to understand this after exploring the internet, seeking knowledge and wisdom on this topic. I found a plethora of different articles, and knowledge and wisdom is most definitely what I gained from these. Immense difficulties will arise in our economy and our country if more minimum wage increases are allowed. The fact of the matter is that with choices come consequences. There are reasons why our economy works the way it is and the way that it does. Some jobs simply aren't worth as much as the minimum wage will be set at. On top of that, economics tells us that with a raised minimum wage, surplus is minimized. Not to mention the fact that minimum wage is simply not meant to be lived off of in the first place. There are many negative effects of minimum wage increasing. One of these being the fact that a higher minimum wage means less jobs, hurting those who it is meant to benefit. Accordingly, some jobs aren't worth as much as the minimum wage is already set at. There's a reason why some jobs pay lower than others. They simply are not worth paying more money. An example comes from a job listing that I remember in high school. I remember my welding teacher telling me about it, and he was making the point that you can make so much money off of doing absolutely nothing. The only requirement for this job was to turn a hose on and off for this farmer. It took no skill, it didn't take any hard work. All you had to do was sit there and turn a hose on and off. The farmer couldn't pay any less than the minimum wage because minimum wage was set too high. It was already set at a certain rate. Someone should not be able to live off of turning a hose on and off. Additionally, economics tells us that with a minimum wage, surplus is not maximized. Surplus is maximized when there's no price ceiling and no price floor. The same applies in paying for employees. It is simple economics. As stated earlier as well, minimum wage is not meant to be lived off of. In order to live, a person has to work and to gain skills. Our economy and society places value on a person based on their skills that they have developed or on how hard that they work. So, if you are neither working hard nor developing skills, or already have developed skills, then you shouldn't be paid very highly in our economy. It doesn't value you very highly. I keep repeating it. These minimum These minimum wage paying jobs are not designed to be lived off of. These employees often are and should be younger people and people who don't need to sustain themselves. So these teenagers who are living at home, even college students, older people who aren't necessarily looking to sustain themselves or to sustain a family, but they're looking to occupy their time or maybe to make a smaller wage with their extra time, are the people who should be filling these jobs. On top of these facts, there are negative effects of minimum wage increasing. The economics are indeed affected. According to thehill.com, majority of economists oppose a $15 minimum wage. Let me repeat that. The majority of economists oppose a $15 wage. These are the people who studied economics their entire life, who know money, who know how the economy should be run, and they're the ones who are opposing a minimum wage increase. A rise in minimum wage means less jobs. Higher minimum wage means a decrease in the value of the American dollar, as we were speaking of earlier when I showed the American dollar. According to Toggle.com, companies may pass on the cost of increased wages to consumers in the form of price increases. This is known as the scale effect. This would raise the cost of living and create a need for further minimum wage increases. And here we see that we get caught up in a vicious cycle. Additionally, the nation is affected politically. The government begins to see what aspects of life they can and cannot control when we let them make changes like this. And then they begin to increase their control and the aspects of life that they are controlling until it becomes too much and overwhelming. As covered earlier, those is meant to help, it actually hurts. According to Cato.org, evidence suggests that minimum wage increases don't reduce poverty. And also, a recent study by two of the world's most renowned minimum wage experts, University of California professor David Newmark and U.S. Federal Reserve Board economist Dr. William Washer, comprehensively reviewed all of the academic studies of minimum wages over the past 15 years. They reviewed more than 90 studies covering 50 countries and found that the overwhelming majority of studies consistently show that minimum wage increases have negative effects on employment. And that is from JB Maverick. In conclusion, increasing the minimum wage is clearly not a viable option here. Again, some jobs that simply aren't worth paying as much as the minimum wage will be set at are being paid because of this minimum wage. On top of that, economics tells us that with a raised minimum wage, surplus is minimized. Not to mention the fact that minimum wage is simply not meant to be lived off of. There are many negative effects of minimum wage increasing, including the fact that a higher minimum wage means less jobs.